Hello and welcome to a special Labor Day edition of Seminole Sidelines. I'm Pat Burnham and I'll be your host today as we talk about FSU's dramatic 24-23 win over LSU in the Superdome. I will be joined by Team Osceola, Jerry Cutts, Bob Ferrante, and Kurt Weiler from New Orleans, and Osceola football analyst Mark Salva from Nashville. Guys, a lot to talk about, and we're going to send it straight to the center of the FSU universe right now, New Orleans, Louisiana. Jerry and Kurt, welcome.
Yeah, it's exciting here. There's Seminoles everywhere. Big win last night. The fan base was tremendous in that game. I expected it to be more dominated by the LSU fans, but Kurt, I thought Florida State, it was 50-50 in that game. Our fans and their fans.
And with the way the game played out, noise-wise, it was probably even further than 50-50 in Florida State's favor, just with Florida State being in control for the vast majority of that game. I mean, you saw the hunger from this fan base to want to have a team worth supporting like they did with a trip like this. And, you can argue with the final few minutes, but for the vast majority of that game, and obviously when you look at the end result, that's exactly what that Florida State football team did last night.
Yeah, it was a game of heart by the Florida State team. I felt like they had victory and they were going to be reluctant to surrender it. And the fan base was the same way. The fans really hung in there last night, and they stuck with the team and I think maybe pulled them through it. The momentum of the game was very strongly Florida State.
Oh, it was undeniably. It was something remarkable to behold, being able to get field access, being behind the bench there for the final few minutes of the game, and seeing kind of the emotional roller coaster, truly, of that was. I mean, the muff punt.
Tell us about that.
Yeah,
you're behind the bench there at the end.
For the final few minutes, they let us behind there, and I was on the field, kind of in the aftermath with our cinematographer Joel, and. It was pretty remarkable to just see. I mean, you talked about heart. You saw the heart of, I think, the moment of that fumble and the drive that LSU went on without FSU and a lot of prevent and moving the ball, I think, 99 yards in about 80 seconds. That's the type of thing that you could see just totally kill the mentality of plenty of good teams. I think it's just, but for Shyheim Brown to come through in that moment, to penetrate, to make that play. The never say quit, never say die attitude is definitely something it's quite impressive that Mike Gravel has instilled, that he definitely did not inherit, that was in this program when he got here. And, it was something to behold. You saw how much kind of with the players on the field afterwards, the hugs, the tears, how much that one meant to them.
So when you're on the sidelines and the fumble occurred, how did the bench react to that?
Talking to Shyheim Brown, it's funny. He said even before the FSU fumble on that pitch, that he was like, we knew the defense was going to have to get one more stop. I think they thought they'd be up at least 10 points. Obviously, if you take over inside the 10, you're thinking you get at least 3. Didn't play out that way. It's funny. I got the video of Brendan Gant coming to the sideline celebrating after recovering that muff punt, and with how bad the Wi-Fi was down there, by the time I got it up, FSU had already fumbled. So yeah, it was you saw Brendan Gant just seemed like relieved to make that play that I assume he thought, and just about everybody thought, clinched the game. Yeah. But they needed one more stop. They didn't get it on defense. That was a impressive LSU drive, like I said, largely against prevent defense. FSU was trying to make sure it didn't get beat deep, but Shyheim had his moment.
Yeah. So during the drive, did the sideline look did it look organized and look like the players were? There was no panic.
I think so. Yeah, they sure had plenty of time to get prepared with how long that review was on that play where he got out of bounds with 1 second or 2 seconds, or many seconds, and then going into, they had plenty of time to get organized. But yeah, it felt like, even Norvell taking the timeout, he wanted to take that extra moment to get them composed. Like I said, they didn't get that stop on the final play of the game, but they got it right after that.
Yeah.
Well.
It's hard to imagine overtime. You never know, but it's hard to imagine overtime would have gone well with how that game played out.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, listen, we've talked about one of the things we wanted to see in this game was the team's ability to react to adversity. And we saw that right off the bat in this game. I don't think the game could have started probably any worse for Florida State. You have the opening kickoff out of bounds, 15-yard penalty adds to that. You end up stopping them once they get in the red zone for a field goal. And Florida State, as Kurt has mentioned, they came back and virtually dominated the next 3.5 quarters after that drive. Tell me a little bit about you guys and what you were feeling in the Superdome as Florida State, came back and took a 17-3 lead after going down 3 early.
I mean, my thought was that Alex Atkins needs a blank check.
Yeah.
I would say I need to go back and rewatch the game, but I know they had to get pretty creative with some of the protections that he put in there because we knew how good that LSU line was, and unfortunately for LSU, obviously they lost Mason Smith on that. Was it first or second series early in the game, and you feel for him, and I know they lost another guy later to targeting, but even without one or two of those guys, that's still a very talented. I mean, LSU, even through Ed Orgeron's struggles late in his time, they recruited at a very high level. That is a very talented group. So to see Florida State's offensive line, I mean, they definitely exceeded my expectations of what they did against the offensive line. And Jared, what do you think about Jared Verse's performance?
Oh yeah, Verse came up with a lot of big plays. I mean, there's no question about it. A couple of times I thought they broke contain on him. Quarterback did. He got aggressive on his angles. The quarterback slipped outside of him. But those are coachable moments, and he's got a big ceiling. Yes. I was going to go back to the offensive line, Mark and Pat. I just wanted to go back to that. In that second quarter, I thought Mike Norvell's play calling most of the game was very good because they were keeping LSU off the field. There were some 14-play drives, 12-play drives. We were eating clock in the second and third quarter. At every possession, and they mixed the run and the pass extremely well. I thought. Now there were some play calls that were all questioned, but for the sum of the game, I thought most of the game was an exceptionally well called game.
Yeah, I agree. Time of possession figured out to be huge in this game. Florida State had it for a little bit over 34 minutes. Possessions were at a premium. FSU had 9 drives. LSU only had 8. So that obviously, Florida State could not have given the ball back to LSU for a second more than it did. It came down to the very last second. But Mark, I want to bring you in here. We're talking a little bit about play calling and the offensive line, and just want to get your overall thoughts on the play calling that you throughout the game, and then of course obviously your initial impressions of the game.
Yeah, Jerry, I don't know if you remember during one of our preview sessions, you asked me the impact Alex Atkins would have on this offense and how it would look different. And I think my answer to you was, not all solutions to problems are in the passing game. In my experience, when I've had coordinators that were receivers or QB coaches, every solution to a problem was a throw, and that there are solutions in the running game, and that's what we saw Saturday. That really manifested itself. Really creative runs too. A couple of jet sweeps with backs leading, counters, unbalanced formations, running counters back. Quarterback keeps zone reads. I mean, look, early in the game they were giving us a lot of 8-man fronts. I mean, there was a lot of guys around the ball, and we still ran the ball. We formationed them out of some things and ran the ball well. So I credit the design of the running game to that. And then going into the game, my thought was, they were going to make it tough for us to run, and that we were going to need to be efficient in the passing game, and especially on third down. And I think 11 for 17 on third downs. Jordan Travis putting the ball in great places all night long, at times under duress, at times outside the pocket, at times with a clean pocket, just sitting there flat-footed. So, a great team win, and, great production offensively as a team. And I credit, again, yeah, I agree with you, Jerry. There may have been some questionable calls, but overall the plan, I think, was sound. I thought the execution was pretty good. Running the ball on second and long, and getting us third and mediums and executing those passes. I mean, man, that was really good for me. So he answered some questions that I had going into the game about our ability to be productive in those moments. So excited about that.
Well, I tell you what, the star of the game for FSU offensively was Jordan Travis, 20 of 32 for 260 yards, 2 touchdowns. Probably even more importantly, he made the plays when they counted, guys. He was 8 of 12 on third downs, and FSU was 6 of 9 on third and medium. But Kurt, you wrote an article post game about Jordan. Just your initial thoughts on the performance you saw on Saturday night from Jordan. He made the plays when he had to, off script, within the structure of the offense. I think probably his best game as a Florida State quarterback. Am I wrong there?
Kurt, that was a heck of a story Kurt wrote on that, Pat. Yeah, I think Jordan really made a step forward on the national spotlight, don't you think, Bob?
I think it was a career-defining performance for him. It was very efficient. It was very composed. He talked a lot about this ACC kickoff. You know, when people asked him, "What do you want to show people this year?" He said that I'm a passer.
Yeah,
that I'm a passer. He's always been a quarterback. He's been a run-first guy at times. But I think the other storyline that's huge, and you guys have kind of touched on this, it's a Florida State quarterback has played well with the guys around him. We're seeing growth from the receivers, the tight ends. The blocking was exceptional, as you guys have touched on. We've always kind of criticized the Florida State quarterback, even before Jordan Travis.
Yeah.
But now we can say Jordan Travis was composed in the moment, and it was also because of not just his growth, everybody around him. But everything just functioned, I think, in a very clean way on Sunday night.
And you have a running game, you know. You have the threat of a run game, so that doesn't hurt.
Well, yeah, I think LSU tried to neutralize it. I mean, it didn't look as good of a run game, but you didn't expect it either. You thought with LSU's front four that they were going to have some difficulties running. They did what they could to extend the chains, and yeah, I mean, third down was huge. I can't recall this good of an FSU offensive performance in that third down situation.
Yeah, well, the other thing too
Bob,
is
go ahead, Mark.
No, I said the other thing too is it wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect. We had 2 touchdowns that were dropped in the end zones, one by 14 and the other by Micah Pittman, on that fourth down call. It was there. If he makes a play on the ball and catches that ball, I think they had the play they wanted. So you look back, and then of course the toss at the end there on the goal line. I mean, those are 3 this game shouldn't have been close. It shouldn't have been close. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Well, and that doesn't account the field goal that you didn't kick in the first half after taking the ball over on the 16. So, you left some. You're right, Mark. They left some points there. And to go back to one of the keys to the game we had for going into the game was because of LSU's defense, particularly that front line. You thought that maybe Florida State was going to have success in the passing game to open up some opportunities as opposed to vice versa. And I think that's what we saw. To Bob's point, 8 different Seminoles caught passes from Jordan Travis. Ontario Wilson had a career game, 7 catches for 102 yards. Johnny Wilson, 3 for 60. Pittman, 3 for 45. And we got 3 catches out of the tight ends this week, which we did not get any last week.
Yes.
Mark, do you think the passing game in this particular a game against LSU was that critical in opening up opportunities in the run game for Florida State?
Well, absolutely. You knew they were going to scheme our running game. They weren't going to let us just jam it down their throat. So they were going to commit numbers. They were going to have run dogs and run stunts to try to limit our running game and force us to win the game throwing the ball. And that's what we were able to do. But I go back. Guys, we did this. And as a coach, this is what you want. You want to win a game, and you want to be able to point in the film and go, we weren't even close to perfect. Look where we can get better.
Right.
Look, if we clean this up, how good we can be. Here's the thing that excites me the most about this game is I looked how we played. It was really good. I mean, up front, we were solid on both sides of the ball. But there are things that we can for sure clean up, right? And who are we going to play on our schedule that has a better roster than the one we just played? So now that gives us hope as a team, as a staff, as players, to look down our schedule and say, there's not a team on our schedule we can't beat if we play our best. and that's exciting because I don't think we've been able to say that for a while.
Well, you mentioned winning in the trenches, and that was one of Bob's keys coming into this game. Was FSU needed to win in the trenches, and I think there was a lot of question marks coming into this game based off all the hype surrounding LSU's defensive line. But when you look at this game, FSU's defense 4 sacks and 6 tackles for losses versus LSU's 2 sacks and 4 tackles for losses. And to point out how good FSU's offensive line was in this game, LSU had 1 tackle for a loss and 1 sack from its entire front 4 personnel. The other sack and the other tackle for losses came either from linebackers or safeties. I think it's safe to say that coming out of this game, FSU might have had the best defensive front. Bob and Mark, what do you have to say to that?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of questions about Florida State's lines going into the game, but you have to feel really good coming out. I mean, we were questioning the pass rush just after the Duquesne game. What went wrong per se, but really nothing went wrong because Duquesne was very vanilla and didn't drop back all that much. In this game, Jared Verse had to play pursuit all day. I thought he said after the game, he said they thought they would see a quarterback like Jordan Travis, and Jaden Daniels in many ways was an older version of Jordan Travis. He was that mobile guy, really couldn't pass. So we really saw the ends had to do what they could to kind of crash and get after the quarterback. From an offensive line standpoint, I think it was just super impressive how through all the injuries, through Maurice Smith going down at one point in the game and really getting right back into it and not going to the sideline, there were some big moments for the line. Jazz Turntine had to jump in on right tackle. Bless Harris, we saw him pregame in a sling. So yet again, the line had to adjust throughout the week, and I think they knew Bless wasn't going to go, but when you're an offensive line coach, you're trying to figure out, okay, who's my next man up? And Alex Atkins has cross-trained for a reason, because in that moment, you have to know my next guy is Jazz Turntine. It's great that he had 10 games of SEC experience for a big moment like this for him. So when you're looking at, we all like to say the games are won in the trenches, and this one felt like the trenches were very much prepared to go out there and match up against some big guys against LSU.
Yeah, I went back and looked at the first half. I was in the first half of the game, and just watching up front, and that's the best we've looked in years. But what made it great was playing cohesively, playing physically. I mean, we were really coming off the ball pretty well, but the combinations that we did, the trading off of the stunts in the passing game, all that stuff that you look at as an offensive line where there's a lot of communication going on. They're well drilled. Nothing really took them by surprise. I didn't see it. Look, guys, they were bringing dogs and stuff, and for the most part, we picked up and got a hat on everybody until there were no more hats, and they were bringing one extra, right? I mean, that was some really good stuff up from best, cleanest game, most physical game we've played in years. And again, moving forward, it kind of gets me a little excited about the prospects moving forward.
Yeah,
Mark,
I think, now I was going to ask Jerry and Bob. I know that you were trying to wrap you guys up in New Orleans so you guys can get back home, but I wanted to ask you about how this game has adjusted your expectations for this team. Mike Norvell in a 3rd season gets I think maybe his most high-profile win because he's beaten Miami, he's beaten a ranked North Carolina team, but I'm not sure this LSU team wasn't better than that North Carolina team, to be quite honest with you. But is this the biggest win Mike Norvell has had in his tenure at Florida State, and how's it reset both of your expectations for this season?
I think it's easily the biggest September win because it's his first September win. Let's go there.
Well,
The August one against Duquesne doesn't
that's
count.
true.
Hey, I count rivalry wins bigger than anything. So that win over Miami last year is huge to me. This one on a road, it's a neutral, but it's on the road. This one counts huge.
It was more anticipated.
Yeah.
There's so much talk about this being a big game.
And it's a big game, too, because of player investment moving forward in practice throughout September. You want to have those guys day after day just grinding because they know, hey, we're winning. We're fighting for something. The brother next to us, the coach who's invested the time in our development. And, hey, it's way too early to start talking about bowls, but when you're 2-0, you think about stacking wins and getting back to a bowl game and having that nice, lengthy season together as a team. I think I think momentum and confidence is a really big thing for the growth of a young program, and we're seeing that program grow year 3 under Coach Marvell.
Pat, my thoughts on it was it sort of validated what I thought we had seen in the spring and in the fall about this Florida State team. We didn't know anything about LSU, but being at practice like we've been, you sort of got a sense this was a real team. Maybe not as talented as some of the great teams, but a team, and that they would fight for each other, which they did. So for my expectations on the season, I called it an 8-4 season, and I think that's realistic. I'm not going to change it to 9-3 because there's 6. We're going to have to steal some games. There'll be 6 opponents we face that we may not be favored against. And so, but I think it validated what we've all seen on the practice field.
Yep, I agree. I think we said that this team, or we noticed differences just in what we felt, the presence of this team and the coaching staff. Well, guys, I know you've got to get back to Tallahassee. Just want to thank you for dropping in and spending some time with us from New Orleans, and glad you guys got to be there in person to witness what is a very big victory for Florida State, as it now takes a week off as it gets ready to prepare for a Louisville team that got beat this weekend. It goes to UCF before playing Florida State. We'll be back with Mark right after this message from Alumni Hall.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall.
And welcome back to the Seminole Sidelines postgame show. My name is Pat Burnham, and I'm joined by Osceola football analyst Mark Salva. Mark, I kind of want to go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. One of the questions you had coming into this game was the mindset, attitude, and effort of this team. And as we kind of referenced early on, probably not the ideal start for Florida State. Opening kickoff allowed them to take the ball at the 35, 15-yard penalty, advances the ball downfield, late hit. And then, of course, we gave up a big 25-year-old run when you gave up contain. And you go down 3-0, and you're ostensibly playing on the road. Kind of what was your reaction to Florida State really dominating the next 3 quarters after that, up until really the last 2 drives of the game?
I thought the reaction was on point. It's a 60-minute game, as cliche as that is, but when things go bad early, you still got plenty of time, and our guys were really confident. Testament to the coaching staff and everybody about selling the game plan, guys having confidence in the things that they've trained on, and going in and being able to execute and fight. And that's the big thing. Things you can control, your attitude and your effort. And I thought the effort was tremendous. The fight was there. Guys, giving 100%. I mean, again, it wasn't a perfect game, but it was a great effort all the way around, and that was the difference in the end, because that last play, I think, signified everything that you hope we're about, and that is, as long as there's a chance, you give it everything you got. And that PAT block team did exactly that, because look, Cheyenne Brand doesn't run in there if those other guys inside of him don't crash the inside and make those guys overcommit to the inside and give that little seam for him to go ahead and block that kick, right? So that's everybody giving 100% effort on the last play. And I love going through Twitter and seeing freezing cold takes as after when LSU scored the touchdown, and CBS tweeted LSU has tied the game as they're lining up for the extra point.
Yeah. Jumping to conclusions there. Hey, listen, and there were several other plays in the game on special teams that were vitally important. Obviously, Jared Verse's first half field goal block ended up being a huge play, as it would factor out. And then, of course, Florida State got the benefit of 2 forced fumbles or drop punts by Malik Neighbors from LSU. Unfortunately, was not able to capitalize on either one of them, but certainly games that are plays that took FSU or LSU offensive opportunities away. So special teams we thought we needed to see a swing play. We saw several that all worked to Florida State's advantage. I do want to go back to what led to LSU scoring that almost game-tying touchdown to bring it within one. All right, a lot was made of the pitch to Trayshawn Ward on that third down play to try to ice the game. Your thoughts? Greg McElroy on the television copy said there's no way they should have run that play. What's your feelings on handing the ball off as opposed to pitching the ball?
Look, for me, I think that's an easy take, right? It's easy take at the end when he drops the ball.
Right.
He catches that ball and puts it in. Nobody thinks twice about it. You've got to be able to execute your offense in all parts of the field, and I don't have as big a problem with it, with them running that play, and I understand why they wanted to run it. They wanted to run a downhill pitch. And if you look at the way Jordan reverses out from under center, it kind of pulls, and freezes linebackers a little bit the way he turns to pitch that ball. And so they're look. Last time we ran a 34 whammy kind of play, right? We ran the fullback dive to Lundy, right, to score, and that's the easy play for sure. But you got to be able to run your whole offense on all parts of the field. Would I have called that play? I have. We have run toss sweeps on the 1 yard line. That's not a something that's not you're not allowed to do. Do I prefer handing it off and trying to find a way to get they're stacking the A gaps. You want to try to hit the B gap. They're bringing pressure off the edge. You're trying to duck underneath it. I mean, there's all kinds of things to consider when you're making those calls. So I'm not going to crucify them for calling a toss pitch.
Yeah.
And the downhill, it's a downhill. It wasn't really a wide pitch. It's more like an ISO pitch. Like our old 46 that we used to run back in the day. But so I'm not going to crucify him for that. It was not a good outcome. And do I wish they wouldn't have called it? Of course you don't. But to sit here after they do it and say that's a bad call, I think that's a cheap take in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't see necessarily anything wrong with the call. I mean, obviously, you could have a missed handoff exchange even if you're putting it in the belly, right? I mean, that's always
you have a fumble
chance.
snap.
Now,
you can have all kinds of things.
Florida State's defense dominated for most of the game. LSU only had 122 yards on its first 5 possessions. Obviously got heated up towards the end of the game, fighting for its life when they were down 2 touchdowns on multiple occasions. Do you see anything that they did schematically to adjust to what Florida State was doing, or was it just a matter of Florida State had played really good and might have been a little tired towards the end there?
I think it was a combination of things, Pat. I think it was protecting the lead, not wanting to give it anything cheap. I think it was a combination of LSU taking more risks, trying to find something that worked. They totally abandoned any kind of running game with running backs. That wasn't even a consideration. The pressure that we had, they were max protecting a lot, trying to, believe it or not, going in, the pass rush for me was a question mark, man. That was answered big time. And, I especially towards the end when, going to prevent defense, a lot of people like to criticize prevent defense. And, it's not a pretty sight when, you got safeties, 20 yards deep and you're trying to, keep the ball in bounds and all that thing. And they're just getting chunks and chunks of yard. But, the other thing you're trying to do is you're trying to bleed the clock. The clock is on your side during that time. So what's the converse of that? The converse of that is that you get in guys' faces and you try to play, regular defense, and then they start taking lots of shots. And, then you get a Jackson State situation. Then you're sitting there going, why weren't you in prevent defense, right? And so, I don't necessarily begrudge them of getting prevent. As bad as it looks, it almost worked out. I mean, we got them down to 1 second. You wish we could have tackled some guys in bounds a little better, and that was probably where you'd correct that. But I think it was a combination of getting tired. I think it was a combination of trying to protect the lead. I think it was a combination of them taking more risks. And you know what? You're only going to hold, that talented group you're going to corral them for so long. they're going to make plays too. I mean, they're on scholarship too, right? So
Yep.
I think combination of all of that.
Well, one of your keys was defending the back end for Florida State, which, listen, when I looked at the stat line, I was shocked to see that Jaden Daniels had completed 26 of 35 passes, but he only completed for 209 yards. And at times really looked like he was uncomfortable attempting to throw the ball. He reminded me of Malik Cunningham when he was a freshman. When the first time I saw him, just at times just did not feel confident throwing the ball. Just talk a little bit about the defense as a whole, and maybe a little bit more specifically what you saw out of the secondary, where Renardo Green had a heck of a ball game, 8 tackles on the night, and of course, Florida, as we've mentioned, 4 sacks for Florida State, 6 tackles for losses. But just your overall impressions of the defense for the entirety of the game.
Yeah, so going into the game, I wanted to see us really challenge their receivers and compete and tackle them in space and give our defensive line time to rush the passer, and you do that with taking away the quick throws and redirecting receivers and making the quarterback have to sit there and go through his read progressions, right? And that would give the rush time to get there. I thought we did a fabulous job on that. I think we played a lot of man coverage, a lot of man under. A lot of man-free coverages, and our guys really held up well. I was shocked, and totally took number 7 out of the game. It looked like we doubled him a lot with safety help over the top, and totally took him out of the game. It seemed to me, I might have been wrong. I want to go back and watch it, but it looked like he had an Andre Bruce moment. Am I wrong on that? Did he not play for his series? And
yes,
he was pouting around a little bit, right?
That was my takeaway on it. Yes.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, when Andre Bruce, we played Auburn in '87, Andre Bruce took himself out of the game because Pat Carter was just whipping him up and down the field. He didn't want to play anymore, and it kind of seemed like that with him. He kind of got really, really frustrated about how we were playing him, and so I give credit to that secondary. I thought they did a fabulous job. The rush is there, but the thing that for me about the defense that's really got me excited is the linebacker play. I mean, it is night and day from last year and the past years. I mean, number one, Lundy, I know he's lost some weight, but man, he looks so much faster, Bethune has added an element to our linebacker core that's really exciting. And the thing about it for me is they're really decisive. The ball snapped, they're moving. They see a read, they're moving. There's no indecision there. And the tackling in the open field, I thought was really good. I can't remember an egregious missed tackle the whole game. And how many times last year do we see guys just run through arm tackles and go for big plays and scores and stuff? I mean, probably the worst one was probably the tackle on the tight end, the very last play of the game. The one that almost didn't go out of bounds. We had a guy, I can't remember who it was, but we had a guy that had him dead to rights to tackle him about the 15 or so, and he whiffed. But that's probably the worst one. But for the most part, I thought we tackled really well in space.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune unofficially combined for 14 tackles and a half sack and 3 tackles for a loss. So as you said, we're seeing a lot more production out of the linebackers early in this season. Bethune had a big game against Duquesne, and of course, DeLoach played much better, I think, against LSU than he did against Duquesne. Probably played more, right? Had more opportunities to make plays. I want to go to Jared Verse. We kind of watered down our expectations of him, and rightly so, because no one could think that he could come in right away and play to the level of Jermaine Johnson. But he had a dominant game, both from a pass rush standpoint, quarterback pressure, then obviously was a huge factor in special teams. Just talk a little bit about what you've seen. We've seen him play against a big-time team now, and he made Will Campbell look like a true freshman for LSU a couple times. But has he exceeded your expectations?
Oh, totally. We knew he was athletic. We knew he could run. But there's a lot more to playing that position than just being fast and big. There's a lot of technique things you got to do. You got to learn, how to bend your body and make that turn and counter, pass protection and all that stuff. There's a lot to learn to be an efficient pass rusher. And he's, just a young player, in terms of being coached that way. Man, he really impressed me. He did make that freshman, head spin for sure. But the athleticism on some of those sacks was really off the charts. And he gives really, really great effort. Chasing. I remember that first 25-yard run. I saw Deloach running the quarterback down, and right behind him was Verse. Just giving all out effort, and I don't think that effort waned hardly at all. And so, yeah, man, expectations going into the season for him were obviously what you said. He's not going to be Jermaine Johnson. But he's going to be a different kind of player. But he's athletic, and he's still got a lot to learn. I mean, there's still some things in the running game I'm sure he's going to have to get better on. And Jerry touched on it. He got sucked in a few times, but those are things that are coachable. And man, but you got something to work with that guy for sure. So we'll see. Can he keep this level of play up consistently throughout the course of the year? And that's going to be the key for him.
I want to go back to the offense real quickly. Third down was obviously critical. They won third down, 11-17, 8 of 12 throwing the ball, and actually Jordan completed 8 passes, which is almost half of his completions that ended up being first down passes, whether it was first down, second down, third down. They averaged over 4.5 yards per play on first down, which means they stayed ahead of the chains. But this was a team that was converted third and shorts, 3rd and 1 to 4 yards, was 6 of 9, and then had drives of 14 plays, 85 yards for almost 7 minutes, 14 plays, 68 yards for 6.5 minutes, 12 plays, 79 yards for almost 6 minutes. Talk a little bit about the evolution of this offense, and we probably would not have seen that kind of sustained success in the past, and what that means to you.
Well, it's all about the quarterback for me. His accuracy I was pleasantly surprised at where he was putting the ball. The spots he was putting the ball in was very rarely did he have a bad throw that I can think of. I'm going through it in my head. I mean, even the drop touchdown passes, the balls were placed in great places. I remember, on a couple of blitzes. Here's the thing. He completed passes, medium range passes. He completed long passes. He completed short crosses. He completed passes in the flats. He completed passes on the run. He completed a jump pass. He completed passes when he was flat-footed back in the pocket. So the range of throws that he made, the types of throws that he made, I mean, that's a rare thing for to do all of that on the run, in the pocket. All the things that he did, to me, obviously made that offense go. And the thing about it that was really good is that being ahead of the change, having these, third and mediums, third and shorts, you have a lot of the playbook to work with. And that gives the defense having to defend the whole field, because you didn't know if we were going to run it. You didn't know if we were going to run a jet sweep. You didn't know if we were going to do a rollout. You didn't know if we were going to do a trick play, flea flicker for a touchdown. I mean, it kept the defense totally off balance. And when you stay ahead of the chains and you have an effective running game, even though we didn't burst any long runs, we got positive yards, and you get in these yardage situations where the defense has to defend the whole field, and that gives you opportunities to delve into your playbook and dial up good plays that Jordan has confidence in. So that's a tremendous thing. It's all about the quarterback being able to execute those throws.
Yeah, and just and then of course FSU did not run with near the success they had against Duquesne, and we did not expect that. Obviously, that was not going to happen. That's only happened one time in the history of Florida State's full football program. But they did have 139 yards on the ground. Successful enough that they had to honor the run, which opened up the passing game. Just talk a little bit about the run offense briefly.
Yeah, well, we knew they were going to scheme the run. Week prior, we have 300-yard backs. Jordan likes to run the ball. We have designed runs with him. So you knew they were going to scheme the run. They were going to overload the box, and that's exactly how they started the game. There's a lot of 8 in the box, a lot of 7 in the box safeties, cheating down, a lot of run stunts, and we countered that with some formation things. We did a lot of unbalanced, and man, we were so close to hitting a couple of these unbalanced counters going back the other way. I think one of Jordan's long runs was an unbalanced reverse out naked type of play going out the backside. So there was a lot of those, the running game we knew was going to be schemed, but yet we still had enough variety in the running. And that's the thing that's really good, is that you have different types of runs that you can run. We're not a really big zone heavy team like we saw, earlier in the weekend. Saw a lot of teams running a lot of zone, but we're more of a counter, jet sweep, direct run, zone read kind of thing. But, the things we did run were effective, and that's who we are. A lot of variety, a lot of backs, a lot of different ways we can hit different parts of the line of scrimmage. We can hit the A gap, B gap, C gap, jet sweeps, all that. So, it's hard to defend every part of it. I remember when Coach Bowden would as we're putting in plays, he may want to make sure that he had a run and hitting every part of the line of scrimmage. What's our run for this A gap strong side? What's our run for this A gap backside? What's our run for the 8 hole, the 9, all that, and he want to be able to hit every one of those areas. And it seems like we have a running game designed to do exactly that in a variety of ways.
All right, well, Mark, we're going to take a quick break and hear from the FSU ticket office, and then we'll be right back to wrap up this show as I get a few parting thoughts from Mark as we head into an open week for Florida State.
Hey Seminole fans, tickets to Florida State football games are now on sale. Right now, you can pick up single game tickets, 3-game packs, and season tickets for the 2022 season. Home games include Florida, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Boston College, Louisiana, and Duquesne. Have fun this football season with your friends and family, all the while knowing your ticket purchase is funding FSU's success. Call your ticket rep today at 850-644-1830 or visit Seminoles.com. That's Seminoles.com.
And welcome back to Seminole Sidelines. I'm with Osceola football analyst Mark Salva. I'm Pat Burnham, and we are wrapping up our thoughts on FSU's 24-23 win over LSU in the Superdome to begin the 2022 football season with a 2-0 record, and they head into an off week. Mark, a couple questions I have for you. This is perceptionally was a big game not only for Florida State, but also probably for Mike Norvell in the third year of this program. Obviously, we think this is his best team. Just how big a win? You've been on staffs in a third year where, it was important to show progress. How big a win was this for Mike Norvell as a head coach and for his staff?
Well, it validates everything that he has been saying about what he wants this team to look like, how he wants the players to play. And, getting the result is the ultimate validation for that. So for him, it gives him, number one, it gives him confidence in the team, gives him, let's face it, everybody had question marks going in. What was this team going to look like? Is Mike the right guy? Can he pull this thing through? Can he make big decisions and bring big wins? You know what? The team responded. He made there's some calls that some of us wouldn't have made. Going for it on fourth down instead of taking the points. We already talked about the toss, all those things. You know what? Part of me is like, man, why are you doing that? Part of me is like, I like the confidence he has in his players to execute, and I think that his willingness to take some of those chances really gives the players buy-in to his philosophy and the things he asked them to do. And so for Mike, it's big to come away with the win and then be able to sit down and say, hey guys, I told you if you worked this hard, if you did these things we asked you to do, the results would come. And it gives him validation to be able to go into the room with his team and do that, and with us outside of that building and say, I told you so. So that's big for him.
All right, now they've returned to Tallahassee. They're sitting in meeting rooms today, obviously on a Monday as opposed to a Sunday. But you got an open week. As a coach, are you disappointed that you don't get to ride this momentum into the next Saturday and have to wait almost 13 days before you play again?
You know what? I guess that cuts both ways, because I'm sure that was a physical ball game, and I'm sure we got a lot of the guys kind of banged up, dinged up. And it gives us time to let some of that adrenaline sink out. So yeah, there's a thing about momentum. There's another thing about, it gives us time to reset this part of the season moving forward and say, okay, we know who we are, we know what we're about. Let's kind of regroup and hit this next part of the season, this next run we're going to go on, and make sure we're as good as we can be. And it gives again, we didn't play a perfect game, not by any stretch, and it gives the coaches a lot of things to get on guys about and to correct and to make us better. So I'm kind of glad we had the open week, having played on a Sunday and having played such a physical ball game.
Well, one of the things that I think we all love about football as fans is that each week gives us a chance to reset our expectations about the teams that we follow. Florida State now 2-0, as we've talked about an off week this week. First of all, how do the coaches leverage this on the recruiting trail? They will be more than likely be out on the recruiting trail. They've lost some commitments to LSU? Do you send coaches back to Louisiana after this week? And how does this help these coaches when they show up on campuses on Thursday and Friday later this week?
Well, it's obviously a very competitive atmosphere out there because we're all competing for the same kids. But it gives us something to point to and say, look, because here's the thing, everybody saw this game. We were the only game on. Everybody saw this game. Every recruit saw this game. Every recruit saw the fan base dominating that dome. Everybody saw the team playing hard and pulling out a victory. Everybody also saw, the kind of cohesiveness we have as a team. And it's all those things that we can sell to kids, to prospects out, in the high schools and point to and say, you saw it, you can be a part of it. You got to leverage it and jump on it. I mean, I'm sure they already did. I'm sure they were on the phone last night, I'm sure they're on the phone this morning talking to these guys. And, it's a great position to be in. It's a position of strength. But when you're and for us, it hasn't been very common. It's been a long time coming to be able to go into a high school or call a prospect and say, all these things I've been talking about and telling you about, you can, here's proof of what I'm telling you is true. All
right. One last question before we go. And we don't want to get too far in front of ourselves, but you have Louisville coming up. They lost this week. BC lost this week. It looks like in week 5 you might get a Sam Hartman-less Wake Forest team. How has this game reset your? How's the LSU game reset your expectations for the next 3 weeks anyway?
I don't want to be knee jerk about this. I want to be, I want to be sure everybody understands what I'm saying. We beat a team that's recruited as well as anybody in the country, probably outside of Georgia and Alabama. And like I said before, it shouldn't have been close. So what this tells me is that when I look down our schedule, there's not a team on our schedule that will have better personnel than the one we just played. There might be teams with better schemes, might be teams with better quarterbacks, more experienced quarterbacks, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of, matching up physically and attitude and effort, there's not a team on our schedule that's going to be any better than the one we just played. So that tells me that if we play at our peak, if we play, like we did Monday night, except take out the mistakes, we can beat anybody on our roster. It doesn't mean we will, but we can. And I haven't been able to say that in years, right? Yeah. And I'm not saying we're going to. I'm with Jerry. We're one injury away from this whole thing falling apart. And so that's probably a little extreme, but we're a few injuries away at the wrong places from having to really scramble and rely on other things. But all that being said, we can compete with anybody on our schedule as it sits right now. And so that expectation for me is, which is kind of, you can say they kind of messed up because now I expect better, right? I'm going to go into Clemson. I'm going to go into NC State. I'm going to go into Florida. I'm going to go into Miami, expecting us to perform and compete and win because they've done it.
Yeah, well, An impressive start to the season for the 2022 Seminoles. Again, a drama-filled last-second win over LSU in the Superdome, 24-23. Week off this week, and with Louisville coming in 2 weeks, and a Louisville team that will either be 0-2 or 1-1. They do play UCF this Friday night, but we can't wait to catch up again with Mark on Seminole Sidelines. Mark, thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed today's show, and we will see you next week on our next edition of Seminole Sidelines.
Scalp 'em, baby.